when they told me it was about women in construction, but mainly women, mothers in construction, I was like, you know what? They literally, in a lot of ways, are raising foundations and breaking ground. So I thought that was just an interesting thing, especially as moms, because you're leaders within your household, but you're also leaders in an industry that necessarily hasn't made room for you. So I'm glad to be here to see the men supporting the women in doing this and saying, you have to put their heart, because a lot of people don't have that support and a lot of organizations don't have that. Because historically, when we think about construction industry, we know that the women have been there, but they've been like behind the scenes. And no one has been recognizing them, and while the men will get the credit for it. But the tables are starting to turn more and more as we go on throughout the years. And we're seeing that women are now what I call the preferred boss. Because people prefer now, and you told me this, so I know it's true, they prefer to work with women in construction opposed to men in construction. And over the last 10 years, women in construction has increased by 45%. So that is amazing, in knowing that now we're able to come from behind the shadows and be recognized for the work that you all are doing. And today, I want to talk to you about the work that you're doing, but necessarily about what happens after the work. So there's a lot of things that you have to do when you're in an industry that might not be welcoming for you, whether you show up in the steel toes or you show up in the heels. But how you're doing amazing work and you're still breaking barriers, right? That's a good thing and a bad thing, because in 2025 we think that the barriers should be broken, but you're still breaking the barriers. So with the work that you're doing, I want you to think about, keep doing the work, but what does that lead you to afterwards? And what I mean by that is I want to talk to you about from leadership to legacy. So leadership is about holding the position. It's about what you can do. But legacy is what is said after you're done. And most people don't know. Many people know me from working with the city of Houston for about 5 years, and being in the system, being in the ecosystem, and helping people to start their business, grow their business. But before I was even doing that, my passion was about legacy. I wrote a book called Pursuing Legacy, and I interviewed very different families about their family businesses, some that their family businesses lasted over 100 years and are still today going on. So legacy is really a passion for me, because I was always intrigued about how and why people would decide to contribute to their family business, or why would they choose not to. Being a person where my family didn't own any businesses, they were all just working, and some of them were old when I was young, so they were retired, they were just at home. And I never saw anything for me that they did that I wanted to gravitate to. And so when I started getting out there and going to colleges and meeting my colleagues and my friends and my classmates, and they were involved in family businesses, I was like, why would you want to do that? What makes you stay there? And so with my studies, I've done and figured out a lot of information about that. And so that's what I really want to talk to people about, because a lot of times we use the buzzwords, yeah, I'm building my legacy, and people are only talking about them. But true legacy is not about you. There's a scholar, Erik Erikson, and he talks about different cycles of life. And the part where he says the full maturity of a human being is when they reach a part where they understand their life is not their own. And that's where we kind of hit that part in legacy. It's not the work that you're doing today, but it's what's being done when you are no longer doing that work. So again, it's about what you're doing today, but what it lasts. So once you're done doing the work, even if you are still here on earth, what are people still saying about the work that you've done? Did that work just stop because you stopped? What are people saying about that? So I want to talk to you about leadership to legacy, give you 3 tips on that. So one of the things I really found out too about legacy is that it's not met without opposition. In my time going through various different work experiences, I was met with a lot of opposition. I thought that from watching my family go through different jobs and everything, that if you go, you perform with excellence, you show up, you'll get promoted, you'll be respected, and you'll be protected. And that's not the truth. You have to go in there and figure out how to maneuver and work in those types of environments. And so, and also I've noticed too that there would be times where I would do the work and they would praise me for doing the work, but when it was time to present the work, I was being left out of those conversations. There are also times where I was told, you deserve a promotion, but you're not going to get it. Straight up to my face, you're not going to get it. And I'm like, why would I not get the promotion if you think that I've done the work? And it boiled down to two different things that I could not change. My age and my gender was why I didn't get those promotions. And so what I want to say to you is that you are always going to be met with opposition, but you have to learn how to rise above that. And so when they ignore you, it's like them saying, we see you, but we don't want others to see you. So from those experiences, that's where I birthed one of my books, which is called It's Me, Not You, How I Survived Toxic Work Environments. And what it really was showing people is that when you're walking in what you're supposed to do, when you're walking in your purpose, people will try to shrink you, to fit their box, to fit their comfort level. And so that is one of the reasons that I have been and stay an advocate for women and equity for women, especially in industries like construction and architecture and engineering, where there's so few of them, but they need that support to keep going on. And so my experience, I realized that, and in my studies of family businesses, which is in my other book called Pursuing Legacy, is that leadership isn't about being liked, it's about alignment. And then legacy is about being remembered for the truth that you refuse to water down. And we'll get a little bit more into that later. But ironically, when we talk about legacy and when I've done my research, legacy is typically born out of some type of struggle, disaster, some pivotal moment where somebody was being marginalized. So as women and women of color, you get a double scoop of that marginalization. But you know what that means? You get a double win if you just keep going through it. So the first tip I want to give you from leadership to legacy is build beyond the blueprint. What I mean by that, if you're in construction, I'm not talking about the external fixtures that you're building. I'm talking about the internal blueprint. I'm talking about what's in you. What is your plan? So you want to build beyond that blueprint. So you want to ask yourself, and that starts with clarity, 3 questions. The first one is what do I want this business to stand for? A lot of times we start businesses for various different reasons. We might start the business because I don't want to work from anybody, so let me just start this business. We might start the business to take care of our family. We might start the business or continue the business because that was our family business. That's fine, but again, remember we're talking about leadership to legacy. And when we're talking about legacy, you've got to build beyond what we see here, the work. So what do you want the business to stand for? 2, what values do you want to outlive you? What values do you want to outlive you? And 3rd, what do you want people to say about you 10 years after your work is done? So with building your business and building that legacy, what you're doing is building a culture. You're building shared values and a belief system that people are going to carry on beyond whether you're there or not. And so there was, the other week I was at a luncheon for this organization called Work Faith. And one of the owners for the Taste of Texas, everybody know what that restaurant is? The wife was, husband and wife that owns it, the wife was there. And she talked about how they started the restaurant really because the husband didn't want to move again for another job. But they faced so many obstacles in that restaurant. They were broke, they were bankrupt, and then she even talked about how she had employees that had some extracurricular activities after work, and they found out about it. But what they did and what stuck out to me is that they didn't condemn those employees. What they did is they made sure that they could help and provide resources for those employees so they could break those extracurricular activities that were damaging them. So when we talk about leadership to legacy in the culture, think about the values you have and that you're imparting to the people who work for you and the people that you are serving with your business. Second tip is don't just hire talent. You want to cultivate legacy builders, legacy carriers. So again, when I talked about legacy is not just one thing, not just your solo project. You may lay the first brick, but who is going to lay the rest of the bricks? It's about vision. So in order for someone to believe in a vision, they have to believe in a visionary, and that's you. So you want to find people who believe in that vision, whether it's family members, whether it's friends, whomever it is, you want to make sure that they are believing in the vision that you set for yourself. In my book, one thing that stuck out to me is when I was researching all the businesses and interviewing them, one thing that stuck out for longevity of why they were able to continue the business generation after generation is that there was always one particular family leader that people had admiration for. And that particular person, they believed in what they believed in. They believed in that visionary, and that's why they took a part of that family business or that family legacy. Just to throw a quick stat at you, only 10% of family businesses even make it to the third generation. So that's not much. So just think about, as you are building your business, what are you building it on to make people want to be a part of that vision and continue it? Also think about, how are you pouring into those people? You're not just managing your staff, you're not just hiring the staff, but who are you mentoring? Who's at your business that can take over the business if you need to take a couple days off, if you need to travel, if you want to expand and go into new ventures? Think about how you are building and pouring into those people, because legacy, again, is not just about you, but it's about how are you moving and pouring into other people and spreading on that shared value system. In my book, there was a family, the Herrera family, and they were community bankers. When I say community bankers, the whole entire cousins, in-laws were all involved in the bank. The reason the bank even got started was because there was Armando. Armando was a fourth-generation farmer. His parents saved up enough money for him to go to college. So he went to college, even went to law school, came back home, wanted to make sure that he could practice law in his community to help elevate his community. Went to the bank to get a loan. And guess what happened? Couldn't get it. Guess how much he was asking for? $500.
Wow.
Couldn't get it. Why do you think he couldn't get that loan?
Because of his color?
Because of his color.
Yep.
That enraged him so much that he spent about 10 years going to family members, going to community members to get the money. He did it, and in 10 years, they had their own community bank. And from that community bank, they were able to help all the members in the community that looked just like them to build homes that they wouldn't be able to get loans to build their businesses that they wouldn't be able to build, and they were able to support the different activities, even from schools and after-school activities, to fund those to build their community. And so I asked Patty, she was third generation, and she took over the bank at 24 years old as bank president. And I was like, first of all, how did they let you at 24 take over the bank as president? Because that's male-dominated, right? And she said, my dad had me involved when I was like 5 or 6 years old. So when it was time for me to take over, I already knew how to run the bank. I would go to school. When I went to college, I took internships. He told me to take internships at other banks and then learn what they had and bring it back. So at 24, she was running the bank with all the cousins and all the in-laws there. And I said, so what made you still want to come back to a small town after being in big colleges and in that life? She said, because I was connected to the vision, because I realized that the vision that my grandpa had, Armando, was my future. And so now she's living in the present, and now she's building the bank for the next generation and the next future. So as you begin to build your business, think about when you're building your business, who are you building for? Making sure that you are building a business for somebody else's future. The third tip is lead with truth, not titles. Lead with truth, not titles. So if we talk about what truth is, we got facts and we have truth. Facts we know are objective, they have no feelings, they have no interpretation. truth is subjective, which means it incorporates different perspectives and it incorporates different experiences. Maya Angelou said that the facts obscure the truth. But George MacDonald said, in the truth is power. So, when we look at the facts, it says that 88% of construction, people in construction are males. So what that is saying is that women are being left out. But the truth is, we know they're not being left out because they're not there. They're fighting barriers. You all have to overcome barriers. You have to overcome historically being left out, being overlooked, being unacknowledged, being hidden, and also being suppressed in the positions that you may have been in. And so with that truth, people, like I said earlier, are now choosing to work with women over men in construction. Because women we're more patient, I would say, most of us. We're patient, we're understanding, we're organized, and we just have that finesse that men just don't have. Right? So we're the obvious choice. So what I want to say to you is that embrace the skills. Even though people try to marginalize you, what makes them marginalize you, take that and build that as your strength. And know that with your strength, that there is power in the truth, in the experiences of how you got there. Also, make sure that your strength is not about you being silent, and that your power is not about how much you tolerate. Your legacy is not measured by how much you endured, but it's about how much you have transformed others. I'm on a board and we do women empowerment for third world countries. And the studies show that if you empower one woman, not a group of women, not a community of women, but if you empower just one woman, you are empowering an entire community. So rest in that and knowing the power of your truth, because you're able to transform communities. So when people say that you may be bold, let it be your truth, because you have to be bold to be in this industry, right? When they say that you are telling your truth or you're not saying things the way they should be confident in telling your truth, because that's your story. Why not lead with what your story is and what your experience is? Because that is the truth for you. And also remember that for all the women who had to be reduced to minimal roles, for those who had to build in the shadows and not be acknowledged or not be promoted, and for those who were left out of conversations about the work that they did and somebody else claimed, they didn't let a position deter them from what they were doing. They made the decision to keep planting and watering those seeds so that you can walk where you're walking at right now. So remember that a leadership is not just a position, but legacy is a decision. And so what decision are you making for the next generation to follow in your footsteps? So my call to action to you is don't just build buildings and structures. Build belief, build boldness, build a legacy that doesn't need some type of ribbon cutting to be celebrated. Whether you have 5 employees, 2 employees, or 50 employees, whether your name is on the sign or on the subcontract, remember the 3 things I told you, that you are not just leading projects, but you are leaving footprints for people to walk in after you. So build beyond the blueprint by leading with your purpose. Cultivate legacy carriers by building with vision, involving others in what you're doing. And lead with your truth, whatever it is, whatever your experience is, lead with that truth by pursuing the kind of legacy that only you as a woman can pursue. So if you want additional information about legacies, I'd love to talk to you with it. I'll talk about it with you. I also, on my website, have a legacy leadership checklist. So if you want to go through that checklist, you're happy and welcome to download it. And want to connect with me on LinkedIn, you know I'm always there. Any questions for me?
Yes.
The book is called Pursuing Legacies. It's available on Amazon.
That's amazing what you said about building our futures and the story about
the Herrera family. Real quick, the other day I was talking to my husband about I wanted to buy other cleaning businesses and other services that we don't do. And my daughter was listening. She's 9 years old. And she was asking me, like, Mommy, did you start your business from scratch? Or, no, did you start your business or did you buy your business? And I'm like, no, I've been building it from scratch. And she's like, well, are you ever going to sell it? And I was like, I'm not sure yet. Why? Well, I don't want you to sell it because when I turn 18, I want to take over it.
All right.
And I was like, what? And then she's like, I want this to be a business for generations to come. And I'm like, this is a 9-year-old talking to me. And I just thought that was really powerful. And what you said just
Cool.
Get involved now. And then, and one of the reasons that you only have about 10% that go to the third generation is because people build businesses and they want to get their kids involved, but they don't want to let go. And when they have their children involved, they want their children to run the business like they run the business. But you have to bring in your children and let them run the business because they know what their generation needs. And so in order for things to move, in order for things to keep living, they have to grow. And so you have to just, you've already made the foundation in building them who they're going to be. But you got to let them bring in their skill set and let them be able to be connected with it. And that's how you get it beyond those third generations.
Great job.